So Lazar, where are you? Lazar, where are you? And Suresh, what do they do? I don't see them. Well, I will say about the title of our panel, Bandung Era and Bandung Constellation. What does it mean? Bandung Era, in historical perspective, is the period where the countries participating in Bandung Conference, or the African Asian countries, during certain period of time, they can realize, put into reality the project based off Bandung State. And this period is very short. 1955 until, symbolically, I would say 1970. The exact date of the ending period of Bandung era is not yet defined. For example, Samir Amin say it's 1980 or 1990 even, because 1980 is the rise of Reagan and Thatcher. So the rise of neoliberalism. 1990 is at the end of Soviet Union. So it's the end of the people of work. I myself, in my mind, it's 1970 because it is symbol. It is passing away simultaneously in the same year of the great Asian African leaders, Sukarno and Nasser. They died at the same year, 1970, and in the same circumstances, political. Sukarno was overthrown by Suharto, and the opening up of Indonesia to the capital, to the Western Bloc. The same as Egypt. Nasser died, succeeded by Sadat, and the opening up of Egypt to the West will impact the overture. So this is very symbolic day for me, that Bandung era ending at 1970. This is Bandung era. And what is Bandung Constellation? Bandung Constellation, you see, the Bandung Conference is like a big bang. It provokes the birth of war, of stars, of comets, of planets, etc. around Bandung State. You have the Association of African Asian Studies, the Journal of African Asian Studies, and then in several universities in the world, Center of Studies of Asia, Africa. So 1955 is like a big bang. And making a constellation, the term in astronomy, constellation of stars, of planets, of comets, etc., around the space of Bandung. So, and the limit of this contours of the Bandung constellation is not yet clear. This is our task to make historiography, historiography of Bandung constellation, to define the limit of this constellation, which is still growing the Bandung constellation. So this is the theme of our discussion now. So I will give time to Manoranjan Mohanty, who is supposed to speak about Bandung, Panchasil, and global strategy. Sorry? Yeah. Yeah, well, they take cafe and also that's why I shout. Speak loudly in order to make them listen. Okay, man.
Thank you. This has been a wonderful experience the whole day. Thank you, Lee, thank you, Darwis, thank you, all the friends
You may introduce yourself.
who have taken the initiative to organize this. My name is Manoranjan Mohanty. I taught political science and China-India studies in Delhi University for 40 years until my retirement a decade ago. I'm also a civil liberty and peace activist. Delhi University in India, that's what I'm associated with. Now, I think I will add one more term to the terms that Darwis has presented after the constellation. Bandung spirit, Bandung era, Bandung constellation, the Bandung process. Better still would be the Bandung stream. I think there were certain values and forces generated in course of the Bandung Conference, prior to it and later, in fact from Brussels 1927 onwards. And since Bandung, a process has evolved. Yes, it is full of contradictions, there are many contradictory forces, but the process is unfolding. And now, for example, this conference is an exception to the dominant streams. We have one stream which is responding to some key problems of our time, and that is the Bandung stream, which we consider to be the main solution, the main response to people's aspirations. So Bandung stream is what I will talk about, and here I will put two other concepts, the Panchashil and Swaraj. Panchashil, people of Indonesia of course know the 5 principles, foundational principles. We visited the Presidential Museum yesterday in Khudori. And of course, I would like everyone to remember that the first 5 Panchashil were in the Buddhist scriptures. They referred to, that was 6th century BC, they referred to refraining from injury to living beings, not taking what is not given, refraining from sexual immorality, refraining from falsehood, refraining from liquor that engenders slothfulness. You know, everything is a qualified, very sophisticated population, even in Buddhist terms. So 5 basic principles and then the 5 principles of Indonesian freedom, and the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence that China and India signed also in April 1954, a year before Bandung, which become reference point in the Bandung process and the Bandung Declaration, among the many principles which were formulated, which were respect for territorial sovereignty and integrity, non-aggression, non-interference, equality and mutual benefit. Principle number 4, which I consider as the principle number 1 in contemporary times, and peaceful coexistence of different systems, different cultures, different identities, and so on. Now, my first point is that the 5 principles really unfolded the spirit of the UN Charter of 1945, and they were regarded as principles governing interstate relations, which the textbooks of international studies would say, though the textbooks in international studies ignore Panchashil and Bandung consistently, today. But I would suggest that they also govern people-to-people relations, region-to-region relations within countries, culture-to-culture relations, ethnicity, identity group relations, equality and mutual benefit. And unfortunately, those 5 principles were not acknowledged by the Western countries, and this was, and as was pointed out in the last session, many countries which then came under the Cold War influence, they also ignored these 5 principles, and the West consistently ignored these 5 principles. Now, after many years, India and China are beginning to refer to these 5 principles, though China more so than India in the recent past. So that's my first point, that there is a Bandung stream of which the 5 principles are conscious, and I'm so glad Auyeung Lai referred to it, Nehru referred to it, and unfortunately our Prime Minister Modi did not come to the April conference this year, but Sushma Swaraj, the Foreign Minister, came. And I was quite surprised that she did not refer. Now the second point I would like to refer is Swaraj. Swaraj means Swa means self, Raj means rule technically in English, but really Swaraj cannot be easily translated into English. Those who know Chinese, Tsui would be what? Self-governing ideology. Ideology of self-governance or something like that. In other words, a belief in self, not even self-determination, because international studies have defined self-determination in very specific ways in terms of independence of nation states. It's more than that. It's self-realization. There is some selfhood, and then again, this refers to individuals, groups, regions, cultures, and so on, and states, of course. So, self-realization, realization of the creative potentiality of self. And before Mahatma Gandhi, whom he considered as a guru, he had used Tilak. Tilak had used this concept. He said, Swaraj is my birthright and I shall have it. This was in 1898, many decades before India got independence. And then Mahatma Gandhi wrote in Swaraj in 1909. We held the centenary, which was attended by Monica and Petronio dos Santos in Delhi in 2009. Now, what is global Swaraj? Global Swaraj is identifying and achieving this selfhood or creative realization of self and its potentiality, creating conditions so that every self really achieves its best. But it has a very important connotation. The connotation is every self considers the other also as self. And this is where the South African Zulu language concept Ubuntu becomes so important. It means I am because you are. Without you I have no identity. So it is this Swaraj Ubuntu framework. In other words, we all must help each other to realize our best creative potentiality, and we want an order to be built which is global Swaraj. And this was the concept in all the freedom struggles against colonialism and imperialism. I was quite struck when one of the earlier presenters quoted Sukarno's inaugural speech. It's not only political independence. Against colonialism you have to continue to fight. And exactly the same idea was in Hind Swaraj in 1909 in Gandhi. That you may drive away the white man, but then there will be brown fights in the same ideology controlling the others. So in other words, Swaraj is an endless pursuit of multidimensional, comprehensive liberation or freedom. So this self-realization is a continuously unfolding process, problematized in struggle. The women's movement, the environmental movement, and the human rights movement have enriched this concept of freedom, concept of liberation immensely. Therefore, what Bandung stream envisages is constant movement towards global Swaraj at every level, from global, regional, national, local, to the immediate local. And that will entail three kinds of liberation and affirmation of freedom: vertical, horizontal, and diagonal. Vertical is global, continental, national, provincial, district, right up to your neighborhood or village. Horizontal is class, race, gender, ethnicity, religion, across. There should be no domination, freedom and equality for all. Diagonal is the intersecting deprivations. I have a book, Class, Caste, Gender, where we talk about this intersectional deprivation. The class, caste, race, gender, no. So that is the diagonal freedom, diagonal domination, and therefore diagonal freedom. Therefore, how many minutes?
3 minutes.
Okay. Therefore, and this should be my final point, that global Swaraj envisages the Bandung stream, which revives the essential debates, discourses of the freedom struggle against colonialism. And what were those struggles about? They were about challenging the premises which govern colonial powers to extend their military, economic and political rule in the name of giving the rest of the world what they considered superior civilization. And the anti-colonial forces said, sorry, there is a civilization beyond your coming, beyond the Industrial Revolution. No doubt, the Industrial Revolution, last 200, 300 years, have achieved a lot through science and technology, etc. But human history is more than that. So the 300-year perspective was reopened by freedom struggle to become 3,000-year perspective, and or even longer. So, and every part of the globe claimed the right to history. Anti-colonial struggle was about right to history, or to quote Ngugi wa Thiong'o, right to imagination, right to define yourself, right to define the world from where you stand. So this right to history was acclaimed during the anti-colonial struggle. And today, why is there so much terrorism, so much rebellion, so much alienation? Because the right to selfhood is denied. The right to equality and dignity is denied. And that is why the Bandung spirit and the Bandung stream is aiming at global Swaraj, global level self-realization, vertically, horizontally and diagonally, to achieve right history for all individuals, all groups, cultural and all ethnic, cultural, regional groups, for the whole humanity, and freedom and harmony between humans and nature beyond the Anthropocene, and achieve global Swaraj in a comprehensive way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manu. And his paper is in this book. Okay, and well, it reminds me to his notion of endogenous development. Maybe Nazar, maybe will develop later. Now, I will call our friend from Nepal. We are still in the Bandung constellation, where the core is Bandung Conference and developed in diverse institutions, diverse conference, diverse journal, and one of the organizations coming out from Bandung Conference inside the Bandung constellation is APSO, Afro-Asian People Solidarity Movement. So you will speak about the history of APSO, its development, and its widening objective, etc., which correspond to the question of Noah about the history of APSO. So, Suresh, 15 minutes maximum, it's okay? Yeah.
Thank you, Khudori sir. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Mr. Suresh from Nepal, and I am from anthropology. I did my MPhil in anthropology, and Today I'm here to present my paper on the topic Afro-Asian People Solidarity, APSO, and its widening objectives. As the title suggests, my main argument of my paper is APSO is Darwis just informed us. APSO was established at the stage of Bandung Conference supporting the same mission and vision of Bandung Conference. My main argument in this paper is, though APSO has been doing its best to materialize the objectives and to receive the goals and mottos proposed by Bandung, it is not sufficient in this present context where multiple dimensions of globalization, let's say, have been appeared and they have been affecting the modern world in different ways. So I will not take much more time, so let me read out my paper and at last I will conclude. This paper is I will begin from my abstract. This paper is an attempt to trace out the history and growth of APSO. It emphasizes its contributions to extending the socio-cultural aspect of the region and increasing the international understanding and sharing the same setting of social and cultural life of the people of its member countries over the last 60 years of its glorious history. The paper is organized into three sections. The first section begins with a clear note that APSO was established as a result of solidarity among the people of Asia and Africa with the objective of fighting jointly against the enemies like poverty, social backwardness, autocracy, and the most importantly against the imperialism or colonialism and the enemy of humankind. The second part of the paper highlights the historical development and the contribution of APSO on achieving these aforementioned objectives and it assesses whether it has succeeded in its mission. Finally, the paper assesses the future of APSO, proposing it to be the medium of cultural exchange among the member countries, since large number of its members share the common feature of having multilingual, multicultural, multi-ethnic, and also most of them are of secular states. In the onset, the crux of this paper is the comparative study of the socio-cultural life of the member countries of APSO. Also, the paper critically analyzes the evolution of APSO over the last 60 years to widen its objectives since the context of its bonding world. It is when it was established APSO. The context of this time and today, there have been lots of changes, and whether it has been able to address this issue or not, this paper, I want to argue through this paper. Only fighting against above mentioned enemies may not be sufficient, as the present world is facing different problems like struggle for cultural identity, right of indigenous communities, fighting against global warming and climate change, and emerging issues of global citizens and international terrorism. I think some of the issues that I mentioned here were not, the issue of that time as much contextual as today they are. Background. Founded in 1958 as one of the oldest and broadest organizations, APSO has been playing a crucial role in mobilization of people through different scholars of Asia, Africa, Asia, and Latin America to handle the problems of the third world countries. APSO was established as a civil society movement with the involvement of the think tanks from different spheres of life of two continents, Asia and Africa, sharing the same problems and aspirations of future. Its formation was the public commitment in the civil society level of the continents that could also be the pressure group of the government of the respective member countries so that the people's voice could be heard. I mean to say, though APSO is not, authentically established as the organ of the government of the member countries, it was the civil society level, it was kind of movement, or it was, let's say, the series with the same spirit of the Bandung Conference. So APSO also can be a medium of achieving objective of Bandung Conference itself. Its formation was a public commitment in the civil society level of the continents that would also be the pressure to the government of the respective member countries so that the people's voice can be heard. On the other hand, APSO was the result of Bandung Conference, which was mainly the movement at the government level against the bullying nature of so-called powerful economically, politically, militarily and so on countries and against the policy of colonialism in the form of imperialism. Every organization has its own motive and vision to achieve in the future. In the case of APSO, there were analysis some objectives. Among them, some are contextual and relevant to the particular time of its establishment. But when the organization starts to move, it has to face some intended and unintended situations. My argument is that though APSO was established supporting the vision and objective of Bandung Summit and the given birth to the NAM movement in the civic level against colonialism and other inequalities, today it shouldn't be confined itself within this limited periphery. Today there are different emerging force issues which have broken down the limit of every sector of human life. In the words of Auyeung Lai, today's world should be observed through multi-scales of modernization. Today is the time when one should search local in global and vice versa. It means all the human organizations and agencies are highly affected by the global phenomenon which should be understood properly for the survival of human institutions and such. I don't mean to say the relevance of APSO has been over, but I think that APSO should be active enough to address the contemporary issues without lagging behind to acclimatize the changing global issues like globalization, issues of global warming and climate change, human trafficking, colonial thought within the member countries of NAM. I mean to say, though we talk against of the colonial powers, but there still what I think is still we will have some problems within our group. It means non-aligned member countries, there is still some of the bullying nature of so-called big countries to the small countries of the same member. I mean to say, if this goes and goes, it is not good for anything, any country, I think. So, APSO should, speak against of such, attitude and activities too. Issues of, though little has been done regarding these issues, lots of commitment made in the past has to be implemented effectively. While doing so, one should know the fact about the historically grounded political economy. This is also the global theory propounded by highly acclaimed scholar Erebus, who says to understand today's society, one should be informed about the past of every sector. In his most popular book, Europe and the People Who Are Rich, I just wanted to stand this argument with these two theories, especially historically grounded political economy by Erebus and globalization theory of Auyeung Lai, and I have also get some help to argue my theory to dependency theory also. So I will go through these theories. My main argument is linking this paper to this theory is, if we are well known about the past of every sector, it is very easy to find out or sort out the major problems of today. Why we are lagging behind today? Are we made ourselves or are we made by someone else? My argument is, now I'll jump a bit forward so that I'll not take more time. So talking about APSO again, what APSO did and what is left to be done. Over the last 60 years, of course APSO has been doing lots of the things, but my argument is, though it has been doing good things, some good things, but still there are some things to be done. So it is again this time for APSO to have the same spirit like in the past. APSO has been playing a crucial role in maintaining the international relation between its member states within the mobilization of people in the region. With the mobilization of the people in the region, it has been organizing several international conferences, seminars, symposiums, and other programs which are not only the rituals of its life, but The platforms to the people to share their common problems, even to solve the possible solutions for the future, for their common good too. APSO as a pressure group of respective member countries often gives the feedback to the government about the international affairs, guides the government to the right direction, speak against the new colonialism, helps to maintain the world peace and security, speaks about the rights of the small countries and makes several reports for the noble cause. It is not sufficient in the changing global context. It is a prime time to APSO to ponder upon the current global issues from which no country of Asia and Africa can remain untouched. So APSO should make itself quite active to acclimatize, to cross to these issues without warning and emerging issues of today's life. So what should be the future direction of APSO? APSO has been able to achieve its primary objective, that was to mobilize the people of its member country, awakening them about the result of human enmity, especially since the world had to face the untold misery after the devastating 2 world wars that was not even imagined by the architects of the war itself. APSO was introduced at such a situation where the world was divided into 2 blocks politically, and both were trying to bring some small countries to their side. In this context, it was natural to APSO to set up its prime objective to speak against the colonialism, supporting international peace and security and such. But there have been lots of ups and downs in both blocks and the world and the social and cultural change has taken place widely. In this connection, APSO alone cannot step back with its age-old objective, as some of them are not relevant today as in the past. So it is the time to face new challenges and solve them efficiently. APSO should widen its objective in the following way. The gist of my paper is APSO should widen its objective. So what are the major areas that APSO can enter now? What are the major areas? What can be the major areas that APSO can give its emphasis or APSO can focus? Yes, there was threat of colonialism during its establishment. There is the threat of so-called big brother countries upon the small countries which are in the same name movement. So this is one, the great question to APSO, whether it speaks against this bullying nature of so-called, great or politically powerful countries or not. There is unnecessary interference in the internal affairs of small and developing countries. The concept of global citizen has appeared as a new discourse. APSO can shed light on this issue about its relevance and significance. There is a threat of environmental pollution, where the developed countries are more responsible. APSO can raise this issue globally. Since most of the member countries of APSO share common culture, there can be the cultural exchange program through APSO. Member countries of APSO can be the new destinations to each other for research studies, foreign employment and others. This is also one of the areas that APSO can focus. There can be the establishment of multinational companies, banks and joint venture projects as we are in the age of economic diplomacy. Tourist industries can be flourished if the people-to-people connect program can be introduced. I mean to say APSO should give emphasis on these areas now. It is sure all these issues can be addressed if only the government of respective countries makes policies to address these issues, but APSO can give feedback to the government using the expertise of its members. So this is conclusion of my paper. Once again, I would like to shed light my conclusion. APSO, though it has been doing its best from its time of its establishment, is not sufficient. World has experienced lots of the changes now, and with these changes, APSO should focus the areas which can suit to the present world. And thank you.
Thank you. 15 minutes sharp. Bravo. Now, we come to Africa. As with this experience of the international South Group. So 15 minutes, okay, Lazar?
Yes, sir. as we have to know each other, allow me to present myself because we come from so far. So let's take a few minutes to know each other. It's important for the follow-up. I am a philosopher by training from Burkina Faso, and I am a deputy chairman of the International Joseph Kizerbo Committee for Africa and the Diaspora. Joseph Kizerbo was a historian, and I will maybe talk later on. I have edited an anthology of texts on the major speeches and texts of Pan-Africanism, of the Pan-African movement, which is online, but in French. But the references are often in English, so if you want to know more about the Pan-African movement, which is a brother movement, I think, to the Bandung movement and spirit, you can look the Pan-Africanism movement in French, it is online. I hope to edit with my brother Jean-Jacques, who is here, a collective book with Codestria on the Pan-African idea to be published maybe next year, I hope. And this will be also an opportunity because in 2016, it will be the 50 years of the coup d'etat against Nkrumah. And I think that was an important day for Africa, when Nkrumah was victim of this coup d'etat. In fact, he was going to Vietnam for a mediation in the context of the Vietnam War, and he learned this military coup in China. So all this is linked to the Bandung adventure, and I think also Sukarno was the coup was in 65. So it's the same period, and also the period of the Cold War. One last word about my publication. I have edited studies about the geography from below in Africa. It's a critique of the colonial frontiers. We have originated from the Europe on the African continent and also online in the Codestria website. So my idea is that we should at the same time use the intellectual internationalism we have heard about this morning at UNESCO. You know, UNESCO has edited also the general history of Africa, but link that to grassroots challenges on our respective countries. So we have to connect the intellectual idealism and internationalism that characterize our adventure, and also the challenges faced by the people on the ground. And for that, I want to talk, it's a kind of personal history and also social history. You know, Marx said that civil society is the flesh and blood of the state, so it's important to do social history. I want to talk about the International South Group Network, which is a group, an NGO and a social movement comparable to Tsui. The International South Group Network was founded in South Africa at the Fort Hare University in June 1994. The goal of the network was to provide an alternative content to the African Renaissance advocated by the new South Africa. I've tried to collect materials on that as I was involved in 1994. I had finished my PhD on philosophy, German philosophy in Europe, and I went back to Africa, to Burkina Faso, and I was immediately involved in this adventure, which I give a positive meaning to the word adventure, which is, for me, is also part of the Bandung constellation. So my first point is how we can connect Bandung to post-apartheid South Africa in the context of this international South group network. I have to say I speak usually French, so if you don't understand, please react. So I try to make myself clear. So the official end of apartheid was supposed to take place in South Africa with the election of the 27th of April 94, followed by the historic speech of Nelson Mandela on June 13 about African Renaissance. We must keep in mind the historic experience of South Africa, even if this country isn't what we had expected. And it's important because the failure of the African Renaissance project in South Africa is also part of the failure of the Bandung project or vision. But history is still going on. So this vision of African Renaissance is one of a very powerful nation who was supposed to be able to contribute to the collective sovereignty of African continent. Because as long as South Africa was not really independent and a minority was ruling over a majority, so the destiny of Africa was not complete. So many people thought that with the ANC coming into power in '94, the history of the African continent will change. And the speech that Nelson Mandela gave in Tunis about African Renaissance in June '94 gave this hope. It was a period of hope, but at the same time we had the genocide in Rwanda. So we understood that maybe things will not be as easy as we expect. This collective sovereignty also mentioned in reference to Kwame Nkrumah, who said, "Divided we fall, united we stand." And South Africa had this vision of transforming Africa into a collective political project. So, immediately after this coming to power ANC, there was this conference in June '94 at the Fort-Hare University. Nelson Mandela was supposed to attend, but actually did not attend. He was president, so he did not come. And we worked with the Ministry of Education. In the invitation for the conference of Fort-Hare, we have echoes of the Bandung Conference. For instance, it states the primary concern of the University of Fort-Hare is to avoid the neo-colonial trap that has prevented other third world countries from achieving genuine independence from its past colonial masters. So the Fort-Hare Conference was saying that in fact the Bandung project has failed, and now the African Renaissance will be a rebirth of the Bandung project. The invitation came from Professor Sibusiso Bengu, who was the first Minister of Education in the first government of Nelson Mandela. He was also linked to the South Commission. I will not say too much on the South Commission, but we know that the South Commission also, who was based in Geneva, was part of the heritage of Bandung. In the South Commission, you had experts like Wijoyo Nitisastro from Indonesia, Michael Manley, who was Prime Minister of Jamaica, the economist, woman economist from Senegal, Marie-Angélique Savané, and many personalities from Brazil, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, etc., and also Asian countries. The vision of the African Renaissance and the idea of the self-centered development of the South Commission are the main sources of the inspiration of the International South Group Network. The objective was labeled as in the following, as follows. The broad objective of the meeting would be to initiate a process of inter-regional collaboration and consultation with a new view to explore areas of common interest, defining alternatives that are relevant and responsive to the needs of the people, developing common strategies and a broad-based organizational framework for South-South solidarity and cooperation. It is hoped that the outcome of this conference will include a declaration and program of activities as well as a plan for the establishment of a network. End of quote. So all this is Bandung philosophy. So I think you have just a few minutes. I will go on quickly. To put it shorter, I must say that the ISGN was active in Zimbabwe, in Burkina Faso, in the Philippines, and also in Nicaragua. So you had this Bandung historical geographical space, but also added to that Latin America with the comrades from Nicaragua. And I had the opportunity to work in this context with the economist Yash Tandon, who is from Zimbabwe, of Indian origin, but based in London and Zimbabwe. So, to go towards the conclusion, I want to say that this endeavor is still relevant today. To give just a few examples, we have recently at the UN a project that is sponsored by Ecuador to draft legally binding treaties for concerning the TNCs, the multinationals. So this is the continuation of what we try to do in the ISGN, inspired by the South Commission. And I think our network should focus also on these issues and do it in a transdisciplinary way. We have to know what are the important challenges, the burning issue at the UN, at the international level, and this project of the Equator, based on the experience of South America, the experience of Venezuela, the experience of control of the national sovereignty on natural resources, which is directly coming from Bandung. We have to support that kind of project and vision and disseminate it in our networks. Thank you.
Thank you. 40 minutes. Bravo.
So Lajan has started to move slowly into Latin America, the extension of Bandung. Now, Beatriz, you will speak about BRICS. So the journey of the Bandung spirit from Bandung to Belgrade and now to Fortaleza. Okay.
Thank you, Darwis. First of all, I would like to thank you and thank the organizers for inviting me to give me this extraordinary opportunity to be here, and also the enormous responsibility of being the only one with one of young students from Chile representing not only South America but the Caribbean too. So it's a very high responsibility. So I will start with some personal explanations about my interest in Bandung and non-alignment and of course BRICS. And it is because in some way, I consider myself one of the heritage and what I have been done former, not at the present moment, as I didn't explain you that I am professor at the Federal University in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And at the moment I am the head of the Department of Political Science. But I used to be a journalist, and I was a member of the founding group, and then with the time I became the director of a magazine which was called Third World, and which has 3 editions in Spanish, Portuguese, and English. And what has the magazine to do with Bandung and with non-alignment? Well, briefly, I'll tell you that Neiva Moreira, who was a Brazilian journalist, politician also, who was in exile, attended the conference in Algiers in 1973, the Non-Aligned Movement Conference in Algiers. One of the most important topics there was the discussion on the necessity of creating alternatives to the monopolies in communication. As a journalist, on returning to Latin America, to South America, he created a network to be able to contribute in a very humble way, but anyhow to contribute to this proposal of having alternatives of that monopolized, north-centered information flow. And that is the starting point of this magazine, which was circulating all over 31 years. And unfortunately, after having survived all the dictatorships, we were forced to close our editorial house in the democratic period. Why? I think because we have a lot of homework to do to rethink the way we are challenged to face the monopoly of the mass media that are so harmless for our proposals. Well, that's the way that I explain my own interest in these matters. As a professor, I am teaching political science, and particularly international politics. And in international politics, particularly African and Middle East issues, because that was mainly what I did as a journalist. I was for more than 20 years covering Africa and the Middle East, and particularly have experience of wars in Angola, Mozambique, and Lebanon, Palestinian issues, and so. So I became also a pacifist and struggling for the respect of self-determination, of non-intervention, all of these so important principles inspired by our main guides from Bandung. So what I try to research is in which way Bandung still inspires other initiatives, and particularly BRICS. Because 2 things in particular I am researching, 2 main problems. The one that was defined also in the 70s by the non-aligned movement, and that was the implementation of a new international economic order. So that was a very ambitious, of course, decision, but even today it is challenging us to change the world economic order. And the other one, as I mentioned, the new world information order. So 2 main problems to be faced that were defined by the non-aligned movement as priorities for them. Let us remember that 3 years later, after the conference in 1977, UNESCO took the problem of the media to be analyzed by a commission of specialists, that was chaired by Sean McBride, and therefore the final report of that conference is known as the McBride Report. And this report that was absolutely coincident with what the non-aligned movement demanded, has various concrete proposals seeking balance in the production and access of information between the developed countries and the third world, as it used to be called by the time now the global south. So, and also there was a very severe condemnation of the monopolies of information. As we remember, the reaction of the United States and the United Kingdom to that report was drastic. Both countries abandoned UNESCO and not only abandoned but cut the fundings of that United Nations agency. And of course we can imagine how hard it was for UNESCO to survive, and that explained the fact that when finally the UNESCO could again start to work in some way as in the past, that idea of a new information order was absolutely abandoned. Nothing more was published, or no reference anymore to that problem. It was put aside. So directly related to the proposal for a profound change in the rules of the game in the economy and in the production and distribution of information at the world level, the non-aligned group questioned also the division of the world according to the Cold War logic based on ideological differences or options, and they identified the real division as based on the unequal capacity of nations to dispose of their own natural resources. And of course, you have mentioned Kizel. So, what we can today understand is that the diagnosis of the non-aligned movement, and inspired by Bandung, was correct. The power of balance of that historical movement, but the historical balance of forces did not allow, of course, for the implementation of alternatives in these fields, nor either in economics or in communications. Nevertheless, in the first decades of the 21st century, in a different world, a quite different world with globalization and so, a new reality is emerging. I think that we can put a connection with these two periods in some way. Some countries that were known in the past as third world countries, now, due to advances they acquired in recent years, have transformed into powers of medium importance. They began to be designated by the media as emerging countries. And they have to come really to identify common interests in their international action. The process that emerged from this situation is quite well known. In September 2006, the foreign ministers of Brazil, Russia, India, and China met during the 61st General Assembly of the United Nations and defined their own agenda, which which aspired to be amplified and consolidated in years to come. And in 2011, South Africa was formally incorporated into this dialogue and the group became the BRICS. So these BRICS, in some way, I think, are trying to put into practice some of those ideas of the non-aligned movement, with the great difference that they don't need any support of foreign powers to do that. They are releasing on their own forces and their own economic power. In Fortaleza, in 2014, Brazil, the fourth meeting at the presidential level takes an important decision. The principal result of the meeting was the founding of a new development bank, which its head office is in Shanghai, and India is occupying the presidency. The objective of this new bank is to provide a source of funding for emerging and developing economies. Among its goals is the creation of conditions that will allow for overcoming the present dependence on the dollar as the principal global reserve currency. The agreement foresees a system of convertibility between the Brazilian real, the Russian ruble, the Indian rupee, the Chinese renminbi, and the South African rand. So, these projects of the BRICS in some way tally with the goals of the non-aligned movement. The proposal of the 1970s for a new international economic order depended to great extent on agreements that could have been made with some powers of the developed world, since the third world countries did not have the political force to impose changes in the world economy by themselves. The only exception was perhaps the OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. As we know, in 1973, a few days after the Conference of Algiers and after the Yom Kippur War, was determined an increase of more than 300% of the price of the crude oil and the imposition of embargoes on sales for Western countries allied with Israel, resulting in the so-called oil shock. So today, the BRICS are beginning to modify the rules of the world macroeconomic game simply by using their own resources and by acting with political will. I think this is necessary to have the political will. Not having an appropriate space for dialogue or negotiation under the structures of Bretton Woods, in particular in the IMF and the World Bank, the emerging powers have opted to use their weight to create alternatives that do not involve an open dispute with the hegemonic powers, and that will not allow them to create more inclusive, that will allow them to create more inclusive conditions for the global South. The presence of China and Russia in BRICS, in alliance with India, Brazil, and South Africa, explains, in part, the difference in the specific clout in the world scene between the BRICS group and the non-aligned movement. The proximity of China and Russia with the non-aligned movement was already present at the time of the Cold War, but the logic of the movement made it impossible to take concrete actions. It is easy to understand that non-alignment did not imply, at least on the part of most of its members, on an equidistant relation to one or another bloc, with the exception of some countries that for historical reasons were openly or implicitly defending the priority alliance with the West. The greater part of the non-aligned countries were fully aware that their potential allies were in the socialist camp and that they could not expect anything similar from the capitalist bloc, which included the old colonial powers. But in the bipolar context, they could not advance more. For this reason, it's important to situate BRICS in the context of an historical process that calls into question the rules of the game that emerged from the Second World War. The BRICS today can move forward with a project of gradual substitution of the architecture of Bretton Woods due to their own weight in the world economy. This was the essence of the project of the non-aligned movement and the Bandung spirit, but of course the situation was different yesterday than it is today. As for communications, the BRICS does not seek to challenge the large media conglomerates. This is not the terrain for their struggle. But what they propose is to change the rules of the game in the cyberspace. The BRICS have outlined a project to guarantee access to internet in confrontation with US hegemony in the network. At the present, the internet system is connected through centers situated in Europe and in the United States. The project defined by BRICS, which is called the BRICS Cable, forces the creation of an alternative infrastructure, an interoceanic system of 34,000 kilometers of fiber optic cables, with a capacity of 12.08 terabytes per second, beginning in the Russian city of Vladivostok, passing through Shantou, Singapore, Cape Town, and Fortaleza, connecting Russia, China, India, South Africa, and Brazil before reaching the United States. The main objective of the project, in addition to reducing costs, is to ensure an autonomy of internet communications of the BRICS in relation to the United States and other Western countries. So, Bandung, non-alignment, BRICS. The diagnosis coincides. Their action and above all their results do not. The international balance of power from Bandung Conference to the golden years of the non-aligned movement did not allow either for achieving the goals of the new economic order nor for changing the rules in the terrain of communications. But the BRICS, even not having raised major banners, they began with modest movements to define their own option to put into practice their ideals. We are talking of two moments, two styles, and the same objective. A less unequal world with opportunities for development, prosperity, and social social justice for the great majorities in a climate of cooperation and international peace. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you spoke 20 minutes, but it is interesting, so I need to interrupt. So, we have almost 10 minutes to discuss. If you have any question, yeah, Noha. Microphone, please. So nobody else. Okay. So I will count. So
Thank
first,
you. Thank you very much.
Second, Makan. Third, Tommy. And Rima. Okay, for the Spanish, it's okay? Okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for all the talks. That was very interesting. I will start by the last one because Beatriz and I we found out lots of things in common. And in her speech now, in her talk, I found another thing. I had worked a lot on 1973 and the new economic order and Algeria's role in the idea of the new international order and OPEC. But I worked a lot also on how the Americans and regimes in particular, the hawks in the United States, worked on reversing the new international order to their advantage, and he said it clearly. We are working here for a political reversal of 1973. And then the work they created, the Trilateral Commission, they started using the word new economic order to their advantage. And as you mentioned, everything started to fall back. So my question, I'm not sure that they did, the third world didn't have the economic power then. Of course, BRICS, the new era, is much more promising. But there are strategic thinkers in the Western bloc who are working always to divert or to change the course of emerging nations. He said we are going to make political reversal, and then started through the World Bank, through the FMI, as you mentioned, and so it's just the other side of the story. What are they thinking now in terms of the new developments that are happening with BRICS? Because they have the capacity to change things. And according to another comment concerning our friend about the Pan-African movement and the changes that took place because of coup d'etat, Nkrumah, etc., I think we should do a lot of research to find out about all these coup d'etats and how they happened and the internal political struggles that have also influenced the course of the Bandung spirit in the post-colonial period, which for some thinkers is still ongoing in some way. My last question is to my friend about ABSO. I think you spoke too fast, but my question, I think I understood that you are saying that the ABSO movement is very restrained. I happened to go to one conference of the ABSO movement, I think in 85 or 86, it was in Tanzania, and there were only 20 people representing ABSO. I presented a paper by chance on South Africa and Israel and the relationship between apartheid and Zionism. And the committee of the ABSO was absolutely, has nothing to do with what we are doing here. I mean, really thinking and working for new ideas. So I think a lot has to be done. My last question. So the secretariat of ABSO today is under who's leading this secretariat? Thank you.
Okay.
about this book.
Thank you again. My very modest observation shows probably that from the presentation of Manoranjan up to Beatriz's paper, there is an overarching hope and optimism, which is great. But to be a little bit more specific, perhaps, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I'd like us to try to deconstruct some of what the speaker said. And my friend Beatriz would allow me, because I'm slightly, I specialize a little bit in political communication and discourse analysis. Beatriz was talking about the 1973, which my colleague Noah has mentioned as well. But interestingly enough, for me, the narrative of this war is very important. And for you coming from Brazil and using the term Yom Kippur War instead of the Ramadan War or the October War shows that you are submitting to the Zionist narration. I know that you probably didn't mean it, but please accept this friendly comment, because if at Bandung Conference we are using Zionist terminology, then our situation needs a little bit of further observation and critique.
I accept, and I'm very, very sorry, I apologize, because that was a problem of translation. When I
lost in translation, as usual.
When I was reading, I was at the same time trying to put the correct word, and it didn't
I'll give you my phone number, okay? The other point, if I may as well, it's very interesting that if I understood correctly, that we said in the end that, roughly speaking, by and large, the Bandung Conference and the BRICS more or less are trying to implement the same objectives. Am I right? Or? Yes. Well, thank you. Now, there is a big difference, and I wouldn't say that I'm a world expert on African studies, but I did study for many years African history and politics. I beg to differ. If only the BRICS, although they have the S for South Africa, I don't think that they have any African bulk, human, intellectual bulk in them, so that I think that still Bandung has got quite a lot to do with this framework, and I'm more than happy to hear your opinion on that. The final thing, Mr. Chairman, would be probably a comment about what Lazar perhaps said. So could you just kindly clarify, probably in one or two sentences, what is it exactly that you are after? What are your objectives, so that we can get exactly what is it that we can help, probably? Because I'd like to activate our ideas, if I may say so, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
So,
okay, I just have some few questions before my comments. My brother from Nepal, I love your Afro-Asian Solidarity Project, but I know that not much about Nepal is known in Africa, especially Black Africa. So I'd like to know the extent to which you've connected your movement in Nepal with Black Africa, which is very crucial in the nomenclature of your organization. Then secondly, to Beatriz, you see, I am a historian, and I got contact in details with BRICS, Non-Aligned Movement, and Bandung during my PhD project, which was on Black Africa-Arab relations, in fact entitled Arab Diplomacy in Black Africa, between New Colonialism and Paternalism, 1952 to 1993. That was from the time of NASA's resolution, his declaration of history in 1954, to the declaration of principles between Israel and Palestine. That was my PhD thesis. And I know that BRICS is just a paper tiger, because most of the prominent members of BRICS are tied to the Western economic model. And I know South Africa, India, Brazil can never extricate the economic system from the West. So I want you to tell me to the extent the BRICS have acted independently economic in relation to this Western world. And again, to the comment I was trying to make, which our colleague here mentioned, was about coup. One area we have tried not to poke into in this issue of Bandung was ideological factor within the time space of 1955 and the component reactions, especially from Africa. Yes, Suharto had a good idea, a good project, non-aligned. He conceived it as non-aligned movement stream. But the ideological stream of the moment made it imperative that the Bandung Conference was bound to fail. And you can see from the dynamics of the situation that non-aligned movement was actually a counter to Bandung. Because Tito, using his conflict with Soviet Union, how to put up non-aligned as an independent organization. Even though ideologically Yugoslavia was still aligned to Soviet Union. So in history, we question some of these terminologies. And again, Nasser, Kamal Nasser had a problem in Black Africa. He had a problem with Nkrumah. He had a problem in Central Africa, just in among Arab world. The conservative Arab kingdoms never supported him because they saw him as a carrier of revolution. So he was never supported. And so the Bandung Conference was seen as another revolutionary weapon to undermine the conservative regimes. And his organization, the organization which was succeeded by non-aligned, was again seen as an alignment with the Soviet Russia. And that actually prompted the gradual overthrow by the military regime sponsored by CIA to remove these people. So we must always look at the ideological context when defining the factors that led to the non-functioning state or demise of Bandung spirit within that time space. Thank you very much.
So the last one, Rima.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, colleagues, for a very good panel. I have four small points, a mix of questions and comments. The first one is an observation. I think it was very interesting this morning when Darwis presented the Bandung Conference, the principles and what the conference stood for, and that basically everything was achieved except one issue, and that's the Palestinian question. It's interesting, later on, when you review of the literature, there was no mention of the way that question was taken of the literature. It was also interesting to see whether it's Afro-Asian solidarity, and what is it, what it has been the way your study works. How come it had seen the question that the remaining unanswered? It's still the issue. And certainly, whatever you come out with at this particular conference, there probably has to be a follow-up to that one. I think it should be among the tasks that are, it's an unfinished business of the previous one that maybe must be continued now. Second point is related to the constellation, the Bandung constellation. I think there are many, you mentioned a number of them already, but there are many things that are happening across the South. A lot of initiatives are going on. Around the World Social Forum, the colleagues from China are here, Lee Kiu Chi, Margaret, and I think they are it's a level called South Sustainability Forum. As Global University, I was working in March this year. There's South University that we launched in Colombia in October this year. Pedestrian Tobacco and ideas based in Delhi together in a South program. So there are a lot of initiatives going on. And somehow they connect all at some point, I think, with that spirit of cooperation, solidarity, independence. But I think there's even, I think, many of those initiatives and see how some of them could be taken forward. The most interesting ones, some of them, I think it was interesting to look at. I have an issue with the BRICS. That's the third point. I think it's very interesting to see the paradox that whole concept evokes and the movement that it is into. To a certain extent, it's a challenge to the global order as it is now. Certain countries coming together saying, we must renegotiate the terms of engagement with the big powers. Basically, that's what it is about. When China, India, Brazil, and South Africa come together, and Russia, it's about renegotiating the terms of engagement. At the same time, they're completely, fully into that system that they're contesting. There will be multinationals established in their countries, so we make some people talk about some imperialism and so on. For me, in a conference like this one, there are two issues we must look at. Number one, are they not reproducing, to a certain extent, the relationships that they are contesting in terms of the South with the big powers? Because of the ways in which these powers are intervening in the other parts of the South are very problematic. That's number one. So it's a definition of solidarity, new things, but also a very problematic thing. The second thing is the development model itself. Are we sure that the BRICS, with their diversity, are not reproducing the same development model that has been critiqued extensively across the world as being unsustainable, because it's informed basically by market principles, through and through, and it is creating problems at every level: environment, social relations, inequality, and so on and so forth. So I think they need to be very, careful with the use of the term BRICS, and they could extend from them basically. The fourth point takes me to. In the, again, Darwis representation, I think it's a citation of Sokarno, who was talking about the modern dress of colonialism. Right? The modern dress of colonialism. Now, this is a way of saying that the colonialism and what it stood for did not end with the formal structures of colonialism. Right? There's an imperial order that has it's reproducing itself in very sophisticated ways across the world. And I think the challenge to that is both political, economic, and so on. It's also, before everything else, epistemological. How we understand it, how we challenge it scientifically first, which is what I thought was extremely interesting in the presentation of Suresh. I think I would like to know a little more about the intellectual foundations of that concept and how it could be applied today in a creative way to this contestation of the modern forms of colonialism. Because in some sense, I think Ubuntu is an interesting concept, or the African Renaissance movement that Razak is there referred to. But how do we take it forward? How does it help us to understand global relations as they are now? And how can we build this global storage, which I would agree with the colleague who said it was a very optimistic view of issues. In some sense, every indication we are seeing doesn't seem to be leading us to that kind of world. Even if you have the sustainable development goals, an extremely ambitious agenda, leaving nobody behind, transforming global relations, and so on and so on and so on and so on. So. But basically, there's an issue I think we have which we have been engaged in scientifically. The battle of Khudori and a lot of organizations in the South has been above all a contestation at the epistemological level, contesting the narratives, contesting the instruments that are being used to analyze global relations, because that is the starting point for the effective contestation of the relationships I think that exist north-south and within the South that are linked about that are producing inequality.
Okay. Now, well, we have already late, but the next session will be Beatriz chairing. So, 5 minutes for discussion is okay for comments. Everybody 1 minute, 4 hours. No, except if Beatriz with our Chinese friends arrange how to manage the remaining time. Okay. Manu, yes.
Very quickly, I'll start from global solar. Even this has to be problematized. The Congress did not always mean what we were talking about. Congress sometimes meant exactly what it means independence. And many of the things that the Swaraj had promised, that Sukarno referred to, they just forgot. They were building nation states in the Western paradigm. Therefore, as these problems become serious in our times, we find new meanings to those very concepts. But they opened up a line of discourse. This is all that I will suggest. And it is not just an ethnic fulfillment. It is more than that, because the diagonal liberation that I talked about, it is interconnection. And this is where Marxism has to be understood in terms of multiple dialectics interacting, yet how capitalism as the dominant class force is trying to impact on all of them. So even though class is an overriding or a very important dimension in connecting or exploiting all of them, still, I always say every worker is a male or female, upper caste or lower caste, black or white. So class politics has to address all these questions. So as for a black woman, unorganized worker in an underdeveloped area, has to be that diagonally fulfilling, multidimensionally fulfilling. So this has to be problematized and developed. Quickly, on BRICS, I have another paper. I take a position between the two of them. My feeling is that these neoliberal leaders of India, China, Brazil, South Africa, and Russia, when they meet in Fortaleza, or last one was in Russia, they talk about transforming the world order. They do talk about financial order reforms. They do talk about UN reforms, IMF reforms. So you have a bit of the new in those declarations. But when they go back, they practice neoliberal economic policies. They have the pro-investment, ease of business, all those things, we know that. Now that is where the two other forces become important. There are three forces in the world in the Bandung+60. The people's movements against their regimes in their countries. Then the world people's movements, the world women's movement, environment movement, workers movement, and so on. And so the third stream is the BRICS and other regional associations, which are of two types. Some are directly like EU, etc., reproducing the Bretton Woods system. But some, like BRICS, have that potentiality to slightly transform that all. So it is a contradictory process, and that has to be seen. Finally, the UN. The UN is an arena of struggle. In the 80s and now, till now, it was the Reagan era which took the. Before that, we had some role, the third. Now again, because of this, emerging forces don't refer to BRICS. No. BRICS is one element. Emerging forces are all of us. All the three streams, people's movements within countries, across countries, and the world organizations of states. Therefore, I think the UN has to be seen in that context. It is an arena of struggle. And therefore, these proposals are important. And we have to use the UN to transform it, and Bandung stream has to incorporate UN into its stream.
Hey, now, well, everybody try to, I'm sorry, 1 minute, okay? Otherwise, we will, Kiu Chi, do you agree if we reduce your time of presentation, 30 minutes maybe, because the committee won't be about traffic jam. Yes, we are going to the Governor Palace to have dinner, but if we are too late, then we will be trapped by the traffic jam. Okay? Yeah. So a kind of consensus between. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I fully agree with Professor Mohanty, fully and completely. I am optimistic by nature. I think we should be optimistic in that world we live. If not, we we can't afford what we are seeing every day. No? So I fully agree, and I think that we, at least from the Brazilian point of view and the South American point of view, BRICS is a little possibility of starting something different. And even being so teeny and so discreet, this possibility, you may understand the importance by analyzing the reaction of the status quo of the Americans and of the media controlled by the Americans. They are absolutely against any possibility of Brazil being part of anything that but what the Americans control or what the West control. At the moment, the government is under a war by the mass media, being, of course, something happened with corruption. Of course, there are many problems, but I, as a journalist who has been not only working as a journalist, but studying the mass media, I am completely convinced that the problem is not corruption. Corruption existed since Pedro Vaz de Caminha came to Brazil. They asked the king for something, corruption. So 500 years. The problem is that the present government, as Lula's government, dare to think different. So in that way, I understand that BRICS, at least for Brazil and for Latin American or South American countries who are entering BRICS through Brazil, is a possibility. But I fully agree that it is a possibility and that the social movements have the role, a key role, to demand what we consider that should be the role of this new possibility. So that's my point of view. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the chair, time is already running out, so please take advice our time. Thank you.
No, because we have negotiated in the next session that they agree to reduce their time. It's okay? Lazar, 1 minute? 1 minute?
Okay, I will go quickly. I think to answer the two remarks, I will talk about the intellectual sovereignty. We are a network of engaged scholars. Our space may be the intellectual sovereignty. In the forces, the social forces that want to challenge the global orders, there are World Social Forum, etc., as Ebrema has said. I think our contribution could be to participate intellectually to this struggle. For instance, for the history of the Pan-African movement, it's true that all this was stopped in the context of the Cold War. It's true, CIA has played a role in the coup against Kuma, that is evidence. So we have to write this history, to continue writing this history. If we want to have this hegemony, we are talking about hegemony. Hegemony is to disseminate the ideas that are positive for the people and for the struggle of the people. Then just a word about the future. I think there are some issues, for instance, just an example, in Francophone Africa, French-speaking Africa, we have a debate about the currency. When we talk about neocolonialism, the currency is, until today, 50 years after the independence, linked to the French central bank. The deposits of the African countries are in France. So this is a kind of issue we can debate with also Asian economists, ASEAN, see how to contribute to the true independence and emancipation. I will stop.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for listening my presentation keenly, and I don't think I will have this pertinent question. I think Mel has raised a question on the Secretariat of APSO. Actually, so far I know it's in Cairo, Egypt, I guess. And I think I don't have more to say than this. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
So, was I allow myself to ask our Chinese colleagues to reduce their time because Kim Chi told me that only 1% will present, the others will comment. So we can reduce the presentation. Yeah? Okay. So now Beatriz, time is yours.
Thank you. My name is Tsui. I'm a teacher and researcher of Southwest University in China. And on behalf of our research team, I'll do this presentation. First of all, I would like to introduce the E7 projects. By emerging, we refer to countries once subject to the yoke of colonial or semi-colonial rule and gain national sovereignty through the colonial struggle and later enter a period of development. And different from the notion of emerging markets or BRICS, we particularly delete Russia because, as you know, Russia is the empire in the 19th and even the 20th century. And this report seeks to examine the change of the global situation based on the perspectives and experience of developing countries. And the history of the E7 provides an account of how countries in Latin America, Africa, and Asia and continue to be involved and implicated in the process of the world capitalist system. Basically, the E7 can be largely divided into two groups. The first constituted by countries characterized by a resource economy, Brazil, Indonesia, South Africa, and Venezuela. And the other countries characterized by an industrial economy, China, India, Turkey, and Brazil. And as you know, the course of development has led by advanced countries can be divided into three historical stages. The first stage is the primitive accumulation of capital through colonization. The second is the development of industrial capital through industrialization. The third is the globalization of capital through financialization. And we developed a kind of international competition of a smiling curve. And you know that at the upper stage, and the advanced countries that they had earned the currency rent. That means they can earn a lot through the financialization. And then those industrial countries that they pay the environmental and labor costs. So they earned the very little. And then for those resource countries, since the 2008, there's so-called the financial crisis, and then the capital flowed through the speculation in the market of commodities. So those resources countries earned quite a lot of revenues, and they can do some kinds of social projects like Venezuela and Brazil. How unfortunately, since the price of commodity drops, it affected a lot the national revenues of Venezuela and Brazil. And now I try to draw a macro picture of our world. As you know, the US still has its own hegemony, and it impacts on our developing countries. Yeah, and you know that now US dollar is still plays the role of global reserve currencies. The second is the euro. So now in the era of financial capitalism, there's the competition between US dollar and euro. And you know why US has his hegemony? Because it has the greatest military power in the world. And it spent a lot, at least 37% of military expenditure when compared with the other countries. And you know that Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi tried to challenge the US dollar hegemony. One proposed a euro and the other grow, but in the end they failed. And there's also attempts from the Latin America. They try to set up the Band of the South, but the band only exists as a legal entity. And there also the experiment of Sucre, but you know that this is, oh sorry. As they try to replace the US dollar, but it can't be achieved yet. And in some countries like Ecuador, Panama, and they also use the US dollar as their official currency. And now China also tried to challenge the US hegemony through the mega project called One Belt, One Road. And set up the AIIB, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. But you know, recently there's a so-called the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, has already achieved. So we find that once you try to challenge U.S. hegemony, the U.S. also tried use different kinds of weapons to defeat this kind of attempt. And now we've also found that in different kinds of stage, we developing country always trapped in the development trap. By development trap, we mean that the more a developing country strives after development, the more it is entangled in structural underdevelopment or social contradiction. The syndrome includes expounding foreign debts, long-term balance and payment deficits, income polarization, social and political instability, external dependency, and even incomplete sovereignty. In a word, it is the vicious circle of underdevelopment. Now, many currencies like the Brazilian reals, Turkish lira, Indian rupees, South African rand, Indonesia rupees, and Russian ruble all have the problem of depreciation. And you find that the US dollar is very strong. And we also have found that they have the problems of external debt increase, like in South Africa and in Indonesia. And we also witnessed many conflicts in E7, like in India. We have the so-called the Maoist armed struggle. It's over 1/3 of Indian areas. And also the protests in São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, in other many Brazilian cities. Quite a lot of young people joined the protests. They against the government public expenditure because they against the World Cup, and they want to spend a lot on education and health care. And also, we have the protests in Turkey. They against the developed projects in the park. And of course, we also have the strict protests in Venezuela. And also the miners' strike in South Africa. And the protests against the gasoline subsidies cuts in Indonesia, and also the workers' strike in China. So after 4 years, we have some findings of the projects. The first one is industrial capital access, be it in any kind of economic and political system, leads to outward industrial transfer. The second point is the capital formation is directly proportional to the socio-economic ecological risks that beset a society, regardless of the social formation, capitalism, socialism, etc., under which it occurs. The third point is the nature of contemporary globalization is the outward transfer of institutional costs by developed countries with an advanced economic structure. The fourth point is successful experiments of inclusive growth result from the formation of social capital based on localized economic sovereignty. And now I try to draw some case studies in relation to land reform and agriculture in China, Brazil, and South Africa. And after the success of revolution in 1949, China launched the agrarian reform from which 85% of the country's peasants benefit. The new regime confiscated all properties and directly controlled all economic resources to take the gains. These institutional gains of a compulsory institution transition, achieved by countless sacrifice by the peasants, can be termed as revolution bonus without negative externality. This bonus has been enjoyed by a majority of people without compensating the original owners. So these are some pictures about the land revolution in 1949. And now we still practice the small peasantry and village community in rural China. And now China equitable land, which represents 10% of the total equitable land in the world, supports over 20% of the world population. Although China's agricultural output is the largest in the world, only about 15% of its total land area can be cultivated. Currently, there are around 122 million hectares of equitable land. The land is divided into approximately 240 million households, with an average household land allocation of just 0.65 hectares. There are some figures about the equitable land in China. So now we conclude that in East Asia, whether you have different kinds of ideology, they are they're so-called the successful land reform in East Asia. That means the land resources are equally distributed among the majority of people. It is in this sense that China has accomplished the historical process of transition from capital accumulation to the formation of high-risk urban industry, although at extremely heavy cost to rural society. So for the last 60 years of industrialization in China, peasant has three kinds of contributions. The total amount is RMB 17.3 trillion. And now, in China, the GDP in different sectors, we found that although the tertiary industry and the second industry, one's 46% and the other 44%, accounts for the largest parts of the GDP. But whenever there are a crisis in the urban area, those crises can be transferred to the countryside. That means in this sense, China has the soft landings. And so comparatively speaking, China has its stability because we have the so-called the double pyramid. Because one is economic and the other the social structure. And the Chinese state's monopolistic governance of capital is still control the Communist Party of China. And also, in the midst of global competition in the stage of financial capitalism, is the national government's ability to maintain its credit system. So that means the people still trust in renminbi. And this is two kinds of stable economic and social structure in China. We find that at the base, there's a large, there are 60% of population are called small poverty owners. It refers to peasants because they have their own land and house in the countryside. And it's about the figures, the rural and the urban population. And in the end, actually, at least in 60 to 65% of the total population is still will be living in the countryside. So to China, rural society is the social stabilized whenever it has its own crisis. In New China's 60 years history of modernization and industrialization, has a rule whenever the cause of crisis could be transferred to the rural sector. Capital-intensive urban industry has been able to achieve a soft landing, and the status quo has been maintained. When costs has not been transferable to the rural sector, however, the urban sector has experienced a hard landing, leading to major reform in fiscal and even economic system. And then from history, we learned that during the 1960s, we have the three ways of educated youth to the countryside. At that time, the so-called the Cultural Revolution. And a lot of the educated urban youth were sent to countrysides to work with the peasants and to help the rural society. And the recent example is in 2008, there was the financial crisis. At that time, 200 million peasant workers were going back to their countryside, to their home village, because they still have their own land and house and their family. So, in a word, China still have practiced small peasantry and village rationale, and then this is why China still can comparatively encounter the financial crisis. And now I try to provide the cases in Brazil and South Africa, and then we find that these two countries could not have the full control of the land resources. And in Brazil, 1% of the population owns almost the 50% of the national wealth, while 12 million peasants are neighboring on lands that do not belong to them. Among the 1.24 billion hectares of arable lands, up to 2/3 belong to 5% of the population, whereas only 15% of the land belongs to the tiller themselves. The concentration of land ownership is remarkably inequitable. And then these are some figures that the rural estates expropriated by the federal governments over the 30 years. And then we found that in recent years, the numbers decreased, even the left government is in power. there's some, yeah. And in 2009, I visited Brazil, and then my host organization was MST, the Landless Rural Workers Movement. They try to fight for the land agrarian reform through the land occupation. Now we find that those landless were protesting along the way, along the big road, and then they set up the camps and campamento. And you see that they had this kind of a plastic shack. And in South Africa, there's the similar case, because most of the farms and mining fields are still owned by the white people, who accounts for the 14.1% of the total population, but owns 87% of the land, while the black people who accounts for the 74.8% of the population, but owns less than 13% of the land. So we conclude that developing countries may have a democratically elected regime. However, if it does not have control over its natural resources, industry, currency and finance, etc., it cannot fulfill industrialization on its own and promote pro-people policy beneficial that benefits the majority of the people. What is left merely an empty institutional shell by the name of democracy. So the E7 embraced developmentalism in different degrees, learning from and trying to catch up with the advanced countries, striving after development at all costs. With the historical experience of colonialism, development seems to be the only way to escape the fate of invasion and enslavement. However, less developed countries striving for development should be aware of its limit. So we promote the ecological civilization with genuine cultural diversity. We must see that the game of globalization led by the West has reached a blind alley. The rules of the game have led to various ills and crises. Only by a critical awareness of what is defective and what is truly valuable in the modern institutions established by the West can humanity look forward to a new era of ecological civilization with genuine cultural diversity. So we promote the 3S. Resources sovereignty, social solidarity, and human security. And we promote social solidarity from below, and we organized two South-South Forum of Sustainability in 2011 and 2012. And this is some pictures. And we organized 3 field trips for foreigners to understand the grassroots groups in China. And this is the second South-South Forum. And we invite Samir Amin. And we visit the village in China, peasant cooperatives, and to promote the exchange between the Peru indigenous and the peasants group. And we also visit Brazil to visit the MST cooperatives, and we found that so many energetic young people, the new peasants in the 21st century. And this is the the peasant cooperatives in Panama, and this is the co-plan. They also got some support from the Brazilian government. And now from South-South, we promote the idea of the global university for sustainability. And we promote people of all races and ethnicities and necessities from the south and the north to unite in solidarity to work for resources sovereignty, social solidarity, and human security. Together, we can build a better world, alternative to militarized financial globalization, diversified, inclusive, and ecologically sustainable civilization in which people and nature coexist harmoniously, thereby creating genuine, inclusive safety for all. And this is echo the Bandung spirit. Let us keep the Bandung spirit alive, building sovereignty and preventing hegemony. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I would like to invite Kiu Chi to be on the stage. Kiu Chi is our advisor of research team.
I think we have closed in time. No questions, no opportunity to question. Perhaps tomorrow, some way during the coffee breaks and so, someone who is interested in this research can ask something. Thank you very much. An applause. And here is the one who inspires the research, I think. So please, thank you.
Due to the lack of time, that just like to echo that we have conducted this project for 5 years, and we have project research teams in each country. And right now we are writing a report which is about 200 pages. You see a brief excerpt of the report in the book that is published just now. The report will be written in English, and we hope that this could be translated into different languages. For us, we feel that basically for so-called emerging countries, if we look at the question of sovereignty, then we cannot look only at the question of political sovereignty as if they have political independence. Of course, political independence is extremely important. And yet, in this age of globalization, where finance capital is being so hegemonic, we have to see how the countries can maintain their sovereignty by somehow using Samir Amin's word, by perhaps strategies of delinking instead of being further incorporated into this globalized arena. And we have, in our reports, we have worked on many case studies, but then we have put a focus on the question of the rural and on the peasantry, especially on small peasant agriculture. We feel that this is a way in which each country can assure its sovereignty through its food sovereignty as well as the small peasant agriculture, where it could be self-reliant as much as possible, and also be able to come away from the entrapment of the globalized economy, where you have the international so-called division of labor, which is so detrimental to the developing countries. And lastly, we feel that we would like to promote as much as possible globalization from below. That is the globalization of resistance. And in that sense, we have been also trying to work for a lot of exchanges and learning, mutual learning for people from different continents. Thank you.
So, an applause and globalization from below. I think this is a very interesting concept. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you our colleagues from